More interesting quarterbacking situation. Cleveland, Pittsburgh.
I think Cleveland, because Cleveland to me is more indicative of where like the quarterbacking dynamic is going across the NFL right now. Pittsburgh's, I think, sort of where like New England was coming out of 2019, where Denver was coming out of 2015, where it's you have a quarterback who's been there forever, who's won Super Bowls, and now you got to replace him. And we've seen that happen over and over and over again over the history of the NFL. What Cleveland's facing, I think, is a little bit like, it's not exact, but it's a little bit like what we've talked about before, Dan, with the Rams and the Niners, where like you're happy with your quarterback. You can win with your quarterback. You've shown that you can get to the playoffs with your quarterback, but is that enough? And I think it's sort of the Mahomesization of the NFL, where teams are looking at these opponents that have Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, and the climb up that mountain is steep. And so it's not, are you asking, are we okay with Baker Mayfield? I think the Browns are okay with Baker Mayfield. It's more, how much better do we need to be than Baker Mayfield at quarterback to get ourselves in a position to contend for championships? And so I think very much that way. You look at where the Browns are, and it's not that Baker Mayfield isn't a functional NFL quarterback. It's how are we going to compete for the next 10 years with Patrick Mahomes in the AFC, with Lamar Jackson in the AFC, with Josh Allen in the AFC, with Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow in the AFC. And is Baker Mayfield good enough to get us there? And I think because of the way he's played this year, they're going to be exploring outside options to answer that question.
Well, I think you reported this, that Cleveland could be in the market for Deshaun Watson. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering this, though, because maybe the Browns are going to have to face this dilemma. Do we pay him $18 million, which I think Baker's owed this next year, mm-hmm. and get through that season and run the risk of he might play into a contract extension? Or do we just rip the Band-Aid off and say, we're in the market for another quarterback here, even though we could get maybe a bargain at $18 million with Baker?
Well, one nuance that I think we have to remember with that is that the fifth year options get fully guaranteed now. In the past, it wasn't. In the past, you were able to cut your first round pick from 4 years earlier if you got to the end of the fourth year and you'd exercise the option. Now you don't have the same flexibility to do it. So but I do think like the Browns could probably find a trade partner for Baker Mayfield. Like, let's say Sean Payton's still in New Orleans next year. Then, I think they would be looking at options at quarterback, and Sean loved Baker Mayfield coming out in 2018. So like, would there be a home like that for Baker Mayfield? So I do think there'll be some options out there for them to move him. I think like to answer the question, Dan, you have to look at where their roster is, and I look at their roster and they're in position to compete for a championship right now. If Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson are available, is there any guarantee you get a year from now and the dynamic's going to have changed at all? Mm-hmm. I think you almost have to take advantage of that sort of opportunity, especially when you look at the landscape of college football. And are you sure that there's going to be a great one available to you over the next 2 years? It's just, I think you look at the Brown situation and you got to say to yourself, there's a lot of good momentum coming off the last 2 years, despite what's happened this year and them not making the playoffs. The franchise is in a good spot. The roster's in a good spot. You can compete for a championship right now. And, that's why I think like they're going to look at it the same way the Rams looked at their situation last year, which is we need to strike while the iron's hot. Let's take a look at what the options are out there. And the top options look like they're going to be Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, and maybe, we'll see what happens, Aaron Rodgers.